Hey everyone, it's Jananie from the channel This Story Ain't Over, and welcome back to another episode of #EpicBookRecs. So this is the monthly series that I do here on the Epic Reads channel where I recommend a bunch of books based off a certain theme. So we've done a bunch of really cool themes before, so definitely go check out the playlist in the description. But for today's theme, I thought it would be a little bit fun to do a theme surrounding opposites attract. So these are all books where there are two main characters who end up falling in love or falling for each other, but they are basically total opposites from the get-go. They either come from very differing circumstances or have really different personalities, or when it comes to some of the fantasy ones, they are actually not the same species. All these are super awesome and ones that I've read before, so I'm super excited to get into this. So let's talk about the first book, which is Honey and Issues Guide to Fake Dating by Adiba Jagirdar. So this is a new favorite of mine because it features two very different protagonists who are both Bengali. So one is Honey, who is very much the people-pleasing person. She is popular at school and she really cares about her friends' opinions, even when they totally invalidate her experience as being bisexual and won't believe that she is bisexual when she tells them. And so in order to convince her friends that she is actually bisexual and that she actually is attracted to girls, Honey decides to fake date Ishu, who is the other Bengali girl at her school and who has a very different personality. Ishu is very prickly, she swears a lot, she doesn't care what other people think, and she is very focused on school. So these two end up fake dating, and obviously, as with every fake dating situation, they end up falling for each other. And it's just a really, really cute book, and it examines the queer POC experience, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful read, and you will definitely fall for both of these characters. Alright, the next book is a really old fave, but one of my all-time faves, and that is Legend by Marie Lu. So Legend is a bit of a dystopian. It is set in the near/far future, and America has kind of crumbled into two different factions, the Republic and the colonies, and there's like a lot of ecological ruin. But in this version of our world, there are two main characters. So the first is Day, who is this kid who comes from one of the worst off sectors of the Republic of America, and he has grown up poor along with his family, and when he fails what is called the trials in the Republic of America, which basically determines where you'll go in life depending on how you score, when he fails the trials, he is sort of sent away and ends up in a situation where everyone thinks he's dead, including his family. But Day is really determined to continue protecting his family and also kind of fight the man while surviving the streets. And so he's sort of made a reputation for himself as Day. So his name is actually Daniel Alton Wing, but everyone knows him as Day, this sort of hero in the community. But when the mysterious plague in the Republic takes his family, Day is forced to figure out a way to find some extra medicine for his family, steal it if he can't afford it. And this is where our other main character, June, comes in. So in the effort to steal some medicine, Day encounters June's older brother, Matthias, who is part of the police force in the Republic. And when things sort of go wrong in the situation and Matthias ends up dead, June, his younger sister, is wrought with grief, and she's determined to catch her brother's killer, who she believes to be Day. And these two are quite different in the sense that Day is a very laid-back character, even though he is in this very high-stress situation, whereas June is very much a very particular character. She's always counting down the minutes in her chapters, and just being in her head is super interesting. And so these two characters are sort of facing off, but they also end up falling for each other as well, and there's a little bit of a romance aspect to this series. This is one of my all-time favorite series, so I try to recommend it all the time, but I really appreciated June and Day's relationship and just seeing how it evolves over the 3 books in the series. Alright, the next book that I want to talk about is Criers War by Nina Varela. This is a really awesome sort of sci-fi fantasy book with a wonderful sapphic relationship. It sort of is in the beginnings in this book, but I have heard that it develops more in the second book, which I hope to get to soon. But basically in this world, humans had created these things called automai, which are basically artificial humans, to be sort of their playthings. But in a sort of famous historical moment, they take over and become the ruling class, and humans become sort of the subclass. And so our main characters are Isla, who is a human servant, and then we also have Lady Crier, who is an automai, and she is also the daughter of the ruler of the automai, and so she is very high up. And so Isla, being a human, has had a lot of injustices done to her by the automai, especially since they took her family away from from her, and so she's determined to get revenge and decides that she's going to find a way to kill Lady Crier. But of course things get a little bit complicated as she's trying to get closer to Crier and become her maidservant, and Crier seems to see something in Isla and finds herself caring too much, and is also told that she's not acting like an automai, she's being too feeling, and so she's trying to examine what it means to be human versus automai. And it's just so very interesting, this book, and I love the examination that they have between the automai and the humans, and it is definitely a situation of opposites attracting because they're literally different kinds of beings, even though they're both basically human, but they also have pretty different personalities. I feel like Lady Crier is very empathetic and she tries to understand people, and she is quite calm as well, whereas Isla is easily riled and is very angry and, you know, wants her revenge and does a lot of things spontaneously. This book also left me with like a lot of questions at the end, so I'm really excited to pick up the next book, which is Iron Heart. Alright, this next book is a really fun one, and that is Counting Down With You by Tashi Bhuyan. So this book features our main character Karina, who is Bangladeshi, and her parents are quite conservative Muslim parents, and they don't really let her go out and do the things that she wants to do, and they really want her to become a doctor and live up to this certain image that they have of her, but she really wants to study English. And so the book actually starts off with Karina's parents going off to Bangladesh for a month, for 28 days I believe, and so she is experiencing this sort of newfound freedom where her dadu, her grandma, is very much more lenient and she is much more understanding of what's going on with Karina, and Karina at the same time is about to start tutoring this boy at her school by the request of her English teacher, and that boy is Ace, who happens to be sort of the resident bad boy at their school. He wears a leather jacket, he has a whole reputation, and he's a bit of a rich playboy as well, and so she gets sort of wrapped up in his world when she starts tutoring him, and he has a lot more to him than his reputation seems to portray. And amid all of that, Ace is trying to prove a certain point to his family, and so he ends up lying that Karina is his girlfriend instead of revealing that she's his tutor. And so the two of them end up in this fake dating relationship, and Karina has to sort of protect her heart from falling for Ace because she knows that when her parents are back home, there's no way that this could happen. There's no way that they could be together. This is definitely an opposites attract, I feel like, because their personalities are quite different. Karina's quite shy and reserved and really wants to please her parents, whereas Ace is, you know, a lot more extroverted and will do spontaneous things and is oftentimes rebelling against his parents because he doesn't approve of what they want for him or doesn't think they really care. And so in that way, their approaches to their family life are quite different, and it was just really interesting seeing that dynamic. Alright, the next book is one that I've recommended a bunch of times, and that is Serpent and Dove by Shelby Mahurin. So this is a really fun fantasy romance, and it follows two different main characters. So the first is Louise LeBlanc, who is a witch, and in this sort of version of our world, witches are sort of hunted and reviled, and about 2 years ago, Louise actually fled her coven and it came to the city of Caesarin and is sort of hiding her magic and hiding from the rest of the world and trying to just make people believe that she's a human and also hide from her coven. And then our other main character is Reed Diggory, who is a witch hunter. He is something called the chasseur of the church, who are basically witch hunters, and they really hate witches and think they are an abomination and not human and that kind of thing. And so when these two characters sort of cross paths and end up in a really weird fake marriage situation, they end up interacting a lot more and challenging each other's ideas of one another. Lou has certain opinions about witch hunters, and then Reed has obviously certain opinions about witches, and so you see those break down as these two characters fall for each other. They're definitely total opposites. I feel like Reed is a little bit more of a cinnamon bun muffin boy where he seems stern on the outside, but really he's a softie, whereas Lou is very charming and seductive, and she knows how to get people to do what she wants, and she knows how to charm Reed into doing what she wants. And so it's quite interesting to see that dynamic. Alright, the next book that I want to talk about is When Dimple Met Rishi by Sandhya Menon. So this is a classic opposites attract romance. It follows our two different main characters, Dimple and Rishi. So Dimple is this Indian American girl who is really bent on her career and being a strong independent woman and really wants to go to this app developing a camp in the summer. But her family has different thoughts for her. They really want her to think about family and think about, you know, finding a boyfriend to eventually marry. They're really into this whole arranged marriage idea, not in like a, you know, we want you to get married right now, but we want to arrange something for you, someone in your culture, that kind of thing. And so the person that they want to set her up with is actually Rishi. And so Rishi's parents are also like friends with Dimple's parents. And so Rishi has always really loved the idea of love and falling in love, and really thinks that the arranged marriage idea is fantastic and thinks it's kind of a stars aligning situation. And so when their parents decide to send Rishi as well to the app developing camp, he basically jumps at the idea and is really excited to meet Dimple and see if there's gonna be a spark there. But their first meeting doesn't really go as planned, and Dimple sort of throws a coffee in his face. It was iced coffee, so don't worry. And their relationship basically starts off quite rocky, but over the course of the camp, Dimple is forced to kind of interact with Rishi, and the two of them discover things about themselves and about each other that they didn't really realize before, and so they end up falling for each other in a very sweet and cute way, and it was honestly a really adorable book. They are definitely total opposites. Dimple is very studious and doesn't really believe in love, whereas Rishi is very starry-eyed, and so seeing that dynamic was really, really cute. Alright, and the final book that I want to talk about is Somewhere Only We Know by Maureen Gu. So this is a really fun book that involves K-pop, so if you're into K-pop, it's super fun. Basically, this follows our main character, Lucky, who is this huge K-pop star. She's like this major sensation solo artist, and she's about to debut in America as well and become even bigger. But at this point in her career, she's feeling, you know, some feelings and a bit of apprehension at this, you know, thing that's taken over her life, and she's not really ready yet to move on to the American market. But amidst all this, Lucky happens to have a performance in Hong Kong one day, and so after the performance, she's sort of sitting in her hotel, and she decides that she wants a hamburger. So she decides to go out in sort of a disguise and only her slippers in the middle of the night to go get a hamburger in a place where most people wouldn't recognize her like right away with the disguise on. And in the middle of the night, she ends up running into Jack, who's our other main character, who happens to be a tabloid reporter. So he does it on the side as like the side gig, and he doesn't actually know who she is at the beginning and ends up helping her go get her hamburger, but later finds out that, you know, she is Lucky. And so he decides that he's gonna follow her around and find this big scoop, I guess, and break it to the tabloid to benefit himself. But she is just looking for a companion to sort of spend a crazy day away from all of her stardom. And things get a little bit sticky, but it turns into a really cute romance. And I found that these two characters were quite different. They valued very different things, and at the beginning, they really sort of knock heads about that and as they progress through the book, but they start to learn a lot from each other, and so it made for a really sort of satisfying end. Alright, but those were all the books that I wanted to mention today, featuring couples that have opposites attract situations, and I absolutely loved each of these books, so I definitely recommend picking each of them up. But I would love to hear from you guys what books you think have a opposites attract relationship going on, where characters don't really mesh at the beginning or don't really have the same personalities, but end up attracting each other. As always, thank you so much for watching. Go check out my channel, This Story Ain't Over, in the description down below, and any of the other Epic Book Recs videos down below. And I will see you in the next episode of #EpicBookRecs. Bye!